Okay, so after what felt like a long winter in Westeros, a Game of Thrones finally became available on my Libby app. I've been waiting on hold for a while. I thought winter may come before it became available. Um, but anyway, a few years ago, I tried watching a censored version that I found online somewhere of the show. I got maybe two or three episodes in, but I eventually just gave up. It just didn't really interest me. So I knew Bran's fall from the tower was coming. That didn't really shock me. But beyond that, I only know what is seeped into the cultural air. I know there's something called a red wedding at some point, which I assume is some kind of political alliance marriage where one or both parties are forced into it. But that's basically all I know. So if you're watching this, please no spoilers in the comments. Let me find things out on my own. So far, I've read the first 9 chapters, about 100 pages, and I have thoughts. I may be right or I may be wrong. This is just my first time reaction. Um, so be gracious with me if I get things wrong. Um, but right away, Eddard Stark stands out. He feels ancient. I mean, he feels almost mythic, like a figure who wandered out of an older epic tradition, like a character that Tolkien may write, who I am much more familiar with. I absolutely love J.R. Tolkien. Uh, but the kind of world where kings ride into battle and justice has weight. That's the kind of character that Eddard Stark seems at this point to be. And this quote in particular at the beginning absolutely grabbed me. This is I think Ned himself speaking. He says the blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the belief that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words. And if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps the man does not deserve to die. And then there's this line: a ruler who hides behind paid executioners soon forgets what death is. I love that idea. I love that idea. Justice is personal. Leadership isn't abstract. If you condemn someone, you look them in the eye. You bear the cost. That line that feels almost Tolkien-esque. Um, and he reminds me a little of Aragorn. Not in terms of destiny necessarily. I don't know if Ned becomes king or not, but in moral gravity at this point. There's something steady and grounded about him. A ruler should not distance himself from consequence. Uh, but then there's the actual king in the story, King Robert, who, uh, well, anyway, there's one point where he's describing courtly life back wherever the king lives. I forget what it was called. King's Landing. That's there's a moment where he's describing courtly life and all the people currying for favor and all this, and he says it can drive a man to madness. That line in that paragraph jumped out at me because the previous king is literally called in this story the Mad King. And now Robert, who was part of the group who overthrew him, talks about how ruling can drive a man to madness. So my questions so far in the story is in this story, is kingship itself corrosive? Is the throne not just a seat of power, but is it a test of sanity? And here's where my familiarity with Tolkien kicks into overdrive, as it were. Uh, if we compare that to Aragorn, who becomes king in The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn sees kingship as stewardship, restoration, and healing. Power is a burden, but it doesn't consume him. In this world, though, power feels different. It feels destabilizing, like it magnifies flaws. Ned feels morally strong, but he's not perfect. His past, particularly the situation with his illegitimate son Jon Snow, suggests complexity. He may be noble, but he's not spotless. So in that way, he may be less like Aragorn and more like someone like Boromir, which is ironic because I do know that Sean Bean played both. Still good and still honorable, but human and fallible. And in this world, I get the sense that flaws matter. Um, Another of the most interesting tensions so far is Jaime Lannister being called Kingslayer, and it noted that he was called it behind his back. He killed the Mad King, and yet people still whisper the title Kingslayer behind his back. It's not something they say to his face. Um, he's so in that way, he kind of reminded me of someone like Benedict Arnold. Even if you overthrow a tyrant, if you break an oath, you're never quite trusted again, even by the people you helped. A traitor, even for a good cause, or what's perceived to be good, seems permanently stained. That fascinates me because the story keeps raising the question, what is loyalty? Is it loyalty to a person, or to a throne, or to justice, or to reputation? Uh, I'm not sure where it's gonna go on that. Like it's very interesting to think about so far. But as far as the biggest turning point so far, I think is the letter that uh, Ned's wife, Catelyn, receives. I think that's her name, claiming that the former head, or former hand of the king was murdered by the Lannisters. Uh, and of course, uh, King Robert is there because he wants Ned to be the new hand. Um, so that letter, it feels like and seeing that the former hand was murdered by the Lannisters, who the queen is a Lannister, um, along with her brother Jaime. That feels like the real engine of the story so far. And then she says to Ned, Catelyn does, "You say you love Robert like a brother. Would you leave your brother surrounded by Lannisters?" That line feels pivotal to me, especially after what Jaime did to Bran, who's just a small boy, and he did it in cold blood. Um, this is the moment where private honor collides with political danger. Ned doesn't want the role. He doesn't want the court. He belongs in the North, in the cold, in the old ways. But love, loyalty, and suspicion pull him south, and so I think there's gonna end up being a big um, uh, conflict between Jamie and Ned specifically. But before I get to where I think things may be going, um, one fascinating contrast I saw was between the Stark sisters, Sansa and Arya. It's a fascinating contrast to me. There's a paragraph that describes the, I think it's in the Arya chapter, but it says that Sansa lives in songs and courtly ideals. She writes poetry. She dreams of princes and tournaments. While Arya is restless, practical, and sharp. There's a line describing how Sansa can sew and sing and compose verses, the refined accomplishments of nobility, while Arya rides and handles practical matters. What strikes me about this is the contrast here from older epic poetry, like the Beowulf poet and others. Because poetry is not usually shown as sentimental decoration. That's a very modern idea. Uh, Poetry is usually tied to memory, honor, and survival. In C.S. Lewis's book, Out of the Silent Planet, the Harassa are both hunters and poets. Poetry is strength, but Sansa's poetry, in how it's described, feels modern, romanticized, and idealized, sort of modern tripe. Um, Arya, though, feels elemental, much more like what a poet uh, should be and has always been in older traditions. So if this story deconstructs fantasy tropes, I wonder which worldview will survive: the courtly dream or the hard, unsentimental truth. So that's another thing I'm um, kind of looking for as I go forward. But where I think this is going, and again, no spoilers in the comments. um, Here are some of my early predictions based on the first 100 pages or so. Like I said, I suspect an eventual confrontation between Ned and Jamie. If Ned discovers anything about what happened to Bran, that tension will explode. Um, I also assume that kingship will change hands again. I mean, this story is called A Game of Thrones, after all. If ruling truly drives men to madness, maybe the throne won't stay stable for long. Part of me wonders if Ned will be forced into greater power than he wants, maybe even into kingship, as a reluctant, morally grounded alternative to chaos. It feels like this world is a place that tests whether honor can survive politics. And so far, that makes it compelling, a compelling read. Um, and and so far, I'm hooked. The prose is grounded, the politics feel heavy, and the moral questions feel real. And that's only the first 100 pages. So if you've read it, again, please no spoilers in the comments. But if you have read it, let me know what you remember feeling at this stage of your first read. Because winter is clearly coming, and I have a feeling it's not going to be gentle. But anyway, uh, I'll see y'all in the next video when I get further.